Hey everyone, in today's video I'm going to show you a very fast and easy way to replace light seals so that you will never have to replace them again. For this, what we're going to need are some cotton swabs. We're going to need some rubbing alcohol, and I keep my rubbing alcohol in a small little film canister. That way if I spill it, which happens often, I don't lose all of it. Yarn shears, actual regular scissors. We're going to need some adhesive backed felt, which is this stuff right here. And there are two different types of felt. You can get them with or without the adhesive back. You want the adhesive back because without it you would have to use plyo bond to hold the felt in place, and that's something we don't want to do. And the last thing you're going to need is some cotton yarn. You could use acrylic if you wanted to. I prefer cotton because cotton will last forever. So the specific yarn that I use is a 4-ply 100% cotton yarn. So the reason that I use the 4-ply yarn is that with some cameras, this like the Canon AE1 or actually every Canon, every Minolta, most Nikons, this fits perfectly into the channel. With Pentax's, some Olympus cameras and some Nikon cameras, it's a little bit too wide, so all you have to do is pull it apart into two strands, retwist it, and then lay it in, and it's the perfect width at that point. But you want to use 100% cotton yarn because this is not ever going to turn to mush. The foam light seals in the old cameras turn gooey because they're made with an open cell polyurethane foam. And some of the makers put foam in their cameras like they were buying it from their no-good brother-in-law so that he didn't have to sleep on their couch. The urethane foam is really easy to clean off. You need to get your rubbing alcohol and cotton swabs. We're going to clean the edges of the film back here, and you can already see it's starting to pick up some stuff. I'm going to clean out the channels in the back here. So what we're doing right now is removing blocks of foam from the hinges on the film back. This is first, it's just a good way to warm up. If the adhesive is left behind, is grab a razor and very carefully, you don't want to hear that sound, very carefully start to scrape it away. So we've loosened that up a lot with the razor blade, and that gives us the ability to come in and finish cleaning this off. Now the back of that is all nice and clean. Looks pretty good. Looks like there's a couple little nicks in there. Overall, not too bad considering that I'm doing this upside down. What I'm going to do to get the last out of the channels there is I'm going to take a cotton swab and I'm going to cut the end of it off at an angle. You can use a used cotton swab for this, but that would mean getting whatever was on this end on your fingers. I'm just going to push like this. If it's really stuck in there, if it's not cooperating at all, you can put a little bit more rubbing alcohol in it. If not, the other thing you can do is get a, I have an old beat up useless screwdriver that's it's a wedge head and it's flat and it's tiny. It's like a jeweler's screwdriver. And I'll use that for really stuck on stuff, but that does scratch up the finish if I don't hold it exactly right. What we're going to do to make this part right here is we need to measure it out first. So I just rough it out by lining it up to parts I've already cut on these, and it looks like I have none that fit exactly. So I'm going to use a fresh edge here. Just going to line it up like that. And I know that it's going to end right there, so I'm going to make a little hole with my scissors point. I know that's something that's probably making a lot of people wince. Now I know where I have to cut, so I'm going to cut right here. And I always make these way, way bigger than they were originally because, I mean, who cares? This stuff's like 50 cents a sheet, right? And it's better just to have it in place and know that it's going to stay there and work well than to skimp on this. So now that it's cut, I'm going to fit it up to make sure I got my cuts correct. And that looks pretty darn good, right? So The adhesive backed stuff is important because it'll stick on its own. And also another benefit of making it larger than the original is that if there's any adhesive on here that would mess with the new stuff adhering well, this will also adhere to unused areas of the film back. So it's going to stay on there really well. And this stuff's made of a material that's not open cell foam, so it should last significantly longer than the 15 to 20 years that open cell foam lasts, which means that when you put this on, it's probably the last time this camera is going to need to have new light seals installed. So we're going to put it on here on the base like this. So, didn't get that right. This is not as easy as when I'm doing it right side up. If there's a little bit of a gap there, that's not exactly okay. I'm not comfortable with that. Good thing I have this little extra bit. What we can do is we can put a little sliver in there, and that's going to hold in place just fine because the film back, when it's closed, is going to press that in and the adhesive will get set in place, so we don't have to worry about there being a little seam there. That's not going to let light in. Now that we've got the film back ready, we need to deal with all of this mess. So let's get our rubbing alcohol and a cotton swab. First thing we're going to do is clean out the back just a bit here. So I like to clean the back before I do anything because that way if material flies out from the channels as I'm cleaning them, then I'll be able to see it there, and I can also check to make sure that there's nothing that's gotten into the shutter. One of the worst things that can happen is if you're cleaning a bunch of sticky material out here, if it falls into the shutter and you don't clean it, then it can get wrapped up in the shutter and ruin the mechanism. It looks like some of the light seal material has gotten out of the channel already and into some spots on the camera, so we're going to clean a little bit of that up first. So to clean out the channels, I usually use a jeweler's screwdriver that's ruined and bent, so it's not going to get messed up any further, just to scrape that out. But if you don't have one of those, you can use a thin piece of wood, or what I'm going to do is cut a piece of cotton swab stick to the right size. You can just push it down the channel here. You want to make sure that when you get to the spot where you have the trip for the back, that you don't keep running and jam a bunch of the goo into there. You could see by how hard it was for me to push that what a challenge it can be to use a cotton swab for this. So I'm going to show you what it's like using a little metal jeweler screwdriver. The Minolta cameras often have a very nice adhesive backing that allows the foam seal to be pulled right up once you get underneath it. I am not as picky about getting all of the foam goo out of the channels as some people are, because leaving it in will give the cotton yarn something to hold on to when it's shoved in there, and the cotton will keep the whatever foam residue is in there from falling out of the channels and getting into your camera. So this way the cotton yarn's held in place really well. You don't have to do that. If you have perfectly clean channels, it's okay, because the cotton yarn has enough friction once it's jammed into the channels by the first closing of the film back that it's not going to come out on its own. And there we go. That was very satisfying. I am still going to run some rubbing alcohol over the channels now that the foam strips have been removed, because that way any of the foam goo that got onto the edges will get cleaned off and won't be a problem later. The yarn is really easy. This is why I use yarn instead of foam. We're going to put one end down here. We're going to take our yarn shears, we're going to just poke it into place and hold it. Poke it into place and hold it. Yes, this is how it works. Okay. Next we're going to bring this free end down to the side, hold it in place, and just run the scissors along the channel to tap it in, cut. Going to repeat at the top, but at the top we have to watch out for the little switch that lets the camera know that the film back is closed. So we're going to tap it in there until right before there, just kind of eyeball where we cut it, and that's lining up pretty well. If I can get it in, come on, there we go. Nope, that's not, there we go. Oh, come on. Now, for this bit, I'm just going to eyeball this. I've done enough of these that I kind of have a good sense of where everything lines up. And trim the edge there. The yarn is sticking out just a little bit. Film back is in again. Now, when we close the back for the first time, it's going to be really stiff. It's not going to want to close. And that's because the acrylic felt is a little bit thicker than the foam. It doesn't compress quite as well. But when this is sat for a couple days, it'll be just fine. We're going to open it up. And what we want to do now is open and close it about 3 or 4 times. And that way, you can make sure that the yarn isn't being pulled up by the film back. If the yarn is being pulled up by the film back, what you want to do is grab a cotton swab and just clean the film back. Because typically when the yarn is pulled up by the film back, that means that some adhesive goo from the foam is still on the film there. It's either the adhesive or the foam itself, which is sticky, but it's still stuck on the back. There we go. So that's pretty good. Next thing we need to do is swap out. Well, this camera doesn't have a real mirror bumper. It does kind of. It's hard to reach. So when you have a camera with a mirror bumper, and this one's got one right there that's really difficult to reach, and actually that's already been replaced at some point, so that's in good condition. If your camera has a focusing screen that can be removed, take it out before you start the process of replacing the mirror bumper. You don't want to get the foam will dissolve when the rubbing alcohol touches it, and if the rubbing alcohol or the dissolved foam touch your focusing screen will be ruined, or it will have a mark on it that can interfere with your ability to focus in certain parts of the frame. Then the mirror bumper was usually just the same open cell foam, so it's really easy just to wipe it off in the exact same way. Make sure you have a nice clean surface, and then line up your adhesive backed felt in the same way as you would for the hinge on your film back. Cut a very thin strip of it and then just put it right there where the foam was. On some cameras, then you want to test it in bulb mode and make sure that the mirror marries up with the felt. If it doesn't, cut another strip and put it on and give yourself 2 layers of felt, because that's going to allow the mirror to close and have a better light seal, which was really the main purpose of having the foam up there. It wasn't saving the mirror by being a big shock absorber. And so the mirror bumper is really easy to do exactly the same way as you would for the hinge. And so that is how you will quickly, easily, and permanently replace the light seals on a camera. Some cameras are really easy to do. Some cameras take a little bit more time, but if you do a bunch of these, you can get it down to about 15 minutes, 10 for a really easy camera. And once these light seals are in, they will stay with the camera for the rest of its usable life.